Now we'll set up Relay 1 to be the publisher for a configurable Goose. Under Relay 1, we'll expand it out. We'll come out to Settings, and we'll expand out to Communications, and 61850. And we're going to be using this configuration here, the TX Configurable Goose. First thing that we need to do is we need to go into GGIO1 Status Configuration. GGIO1 stands for General Generic Input Outputs. When we open this up, we have a list of 128 positions that we can fill, and this is just a bucket where we can place different types of signals. The number of status points are very important. This has to match on the receiving side, which I'll point out to you later. This is in increments of 8, so it's very important that this quantity matches on the receiver side as well, on the subscriber side. So let's leave it at 8 as the default. First, let's put in a couple of signals here. We'll put in switch positions 2 and 3 for the configurable Goose. So I'm just typing in the second switch, and I'll type in also the third switch into the second position. So we'll save this. Now let me minimize this so we can see this. The next part of this thing is actually opening the configurable Goose. Under the TX Configurable Goose, we have 8 gooses available to us. You can see here we have Goose Out 1 with 64 data points, Goose Out 2, it'll have 64 data points, so forth, so on, all the way down to number 8. So what we're going to do is we're going to go with number 1 first. We need to turn it on. I comment, the fixed Goose and the configurable Goose can both operate at the same time. They will not conflict with each other. So let's give this a name. So this is the name of the Goose message. It cannot be the same as it was in the fixed Goose. So let's give it a little different name. Motor underscore A1. Same type of idea. We have a VLAN priority. We'll put in our VLAN ID and the E-type application ID as well as 1. And we'll leave everything else the same. The items that are going to be listed inside this Goose are going to be these items here. So when we click on the pull down here beside data set item 1, we have these points here. So this is GGIO 1, status indicator 1. There's a quality bit and a status value. What we're interested in is monitoring the status of this switch. So we're going to select status value as 1. Indicator 1 here represents indicator 1 here. In the second position, we're going to do indicator number 2, which represents indication number 2. And that concludes. We'll save it. It wants us to reboot the relay, so we're going to do that in a moment. We'll hit OK. We're going to save this setting. And let's close these down. Before this becomes operational, before it'll publish, we'll have to reboot the relay. To reboot the relay, we can do it manually through the software, or you can cycle the power on the relay. We can do it here through the software by going to Maintenance, Reboot Relay Command, double click on it, select yes, and this will reboot the relay. Once the relay has rebooted, we can reestablish communications by selecting these icons on top. Initially turn it on, and then going back to this icon to switch it back on, and we should be back online again with the relay. This is change B1 hash mark for our cyber security. on version 7. All right. That concludes the publisher side of the Configurable Goose for digital signals only. Okay. Now we'll configure Relay 2 to be the subscriber for the Configurable Goose. The first thing we need to go to is, as we did with the fixed Goose, we're going to need to go into the settings file. We'll log into the relay. And we'll go into the settings portion of relay number 2, into the inputs and outputs. And once again, we're going to have to indicate who our remote devices are to us again. This time, we're going to replace the name with motor_A. It's very important that this name matches exactly what's being published. If the publisher is using uppercase characters to name the Goose message, then the subscriber will have to use uppercase as well. So the other thing that we have to change here is the type app ID. This was 1 according to the publisher. This is where it changes for the Configurable Goose. The data set type has to change from fixed to GooseIn1. Now, this is just a holding area as to where the Goose messages will be stored in memory on the subscriber side. So we'll save this. Let's close this. The other thing that we need to do is on the remote inputs, we'll have to come in here and we'll have to indicate what this is as well. Let's give this a new name. Let's call it breaker 1, sorry, let's call it breaker 2, 52A. This will be the other Goose message that we're getting. And you can see the other Goose message is listed here. We'll select that one as well. And for the item set, instead of selecting DNA 1 through 32 or user status 1 through 32, we need to go down to this portion here where we have to select the item number. In this case, it was the signal that we're looking for is in the first position of that 64 data bits. So if we go down further, there's actually 64 to choose from. 32. And we'll select Save. Now, let's verify that we're actually communicating, we're actually acknowledging the Goose message. If we come to actual values and check the status again, under actual values, the next thing that we need to do is we need to check on the status of the Goose message to make sure it's available for the subscriber. So we'll come back down to actual values, to status, and we'll come down to remote devices status. And when we come to the screen, we'll notice that this Goose message is unavailable. It's offline because we've missed one step. There's one more step that we need to do. So let's close this down for a moment. We have to go to the subscriber side for the subscriber. This is located under Settings, under Product Setup, Communications, 61850, and then we need to go right here into the Receive Configurable Goose. This device has to match, we have to match the number of inputs here compared to the number of items that were being published. So on Relay 1, we were publishing 2 individual signals, Indicator 1 and Indicator 2. We have to indicate the size of the Goose message. So we have to put in 2 as well. You can see the other choices here are, there's up to 64 of these, I believe, and then our analog signals. So that will come later. Once we save this, we're going to have to reboot the relay again. So we saved it. Now we'll come back and we'll reboot the relay. Once again, this is located under actual values, under maintenance. So let me just minimize this so you can see it. Whoops. So under actual values, we have our maintenance screen right here, reboot relay. All right, let's bring relay number 2 back online. So we're going to go back into the actual values portion, and we're going to verify that the remote device status is working. We're logging into the relay. And there we are. Our configurable Goose message is now online. Now that we verify that this Goose message is online, let's close this and let's confirm that that Goose message is actually being published across the network. So we'll come back under relay 2, we'll go to actual values, status, and we'll check the remote input number 2. Remember, the first one was for our fixed Goose message. Number 2 is for our configurable Goose. I'll get Antoine to close the switch for me. And there, we're now publishing that across our network as well. All right, this concludes the subscriber side for the digital signals. Next, we'll work with analog signals. In this video, we're going to configure relay 1 now to send an analog signal as a publisher. So first things that we need to do is we need to go into the settings again, and things are going to change here a little bit. We have a choice of different signals that we can publish for analog signals. So under 61850 we have a large number of different items available to us. We can either use the MMXU logical node, or we can go with the GGIO4. We'll do one of each just to show you the difference between the two. On the MMXU, what we'll do is this. We'll transmit the phase A RMS and the voltage at the ground, phase A to ground RMS. So we need to configure this here. You can see that the name convention is very straightforward. We have total watts deadband, we have hertz deadband, phase-to-phase voltage for phase A to B, phase voltage, phase A. We have amps, phase A, watts, and all the different phases, VARs, so forth, so on. What's important here is that the information will not be published if it doesn't exceed this amount. So to ensure that we get our information to go across so we can see this actually operating properly, what we'll do is we'll make this to a very small value. So we'll change the phase voltage, phase A, to 0.001, and the amps phase A deadband to 0.001 as well. Now, the MMXU1 and MMXU2, these are referring to the sources that are associated with the DSP card. All right, so let's save this. All right, second item, let's go with the GGIO4. The GGIO4 was designed for those parameters that were not part of the logical node of MMXU, but we can select more or less the same type of signals. Once again, we have our different signals listed here. We'll do the same thing, source 1, amps RMS. The deadband, this is very important. If you leave this with these default numbers, you'll never get it to transmit. So make this a very small number again. Make the maximum a smaller number. This is 1,000,000. Let's cut it down to, say, 1,000. And the second signal we'll select is our volts. Phase A to ground. It's listed in here as well. All right here. Terrific. Same thing. We'll reduce it to a small value. Now, what's important about this is this. If the communication is not working, this is the maximum number that it'll display on the analog inputs on the subscriber side. So that way you know that the communications is broken when you see a value of 1,000 at the other end. Okay, so let's save this. You can see it wants us to reboot the relay. So we've taken care of the deadband from the MMXU. We've taken care of the deadband from GGIO4. So let's close this down. Now, one more thing that we have to do. In the server configuration, this is extremely important. We need to change the name of the IED name. This is part of the 61850 standard that no two relays should have the same name. So we'll name the publisher as, we'll call it Pump A. And the other thing that's extremely important for analog signals is this server scanner must be enabled. If this is not enabled, it will not publish the analog signals across the network. So we'll save that. The next part of this is that we now have to populate our Goose message with these analog signals that we just created. So we come back into the TX Configurable Goose. And we're going to come down and we're not going to use Goose 1 or Goose 2 because these are allocated for high-speed digital signals. We can put analog signals in here, but it won't publish unless there's a change in the state of an analog signal. However, if we go to any of the other Goose 3 through 8, anytime there's a change in the analog value that's greater than the deadband that we just programmed, it will automatically publish the signal, whether a digital signal change states or not. So we'll turn this on. We'll give it a name. So we'll call this motor underscore A. I'll call it analog. We'll go through the same thing with the VLAN, 1 and 1. We'll enter our display values. So this is now where we start getting into a little bit something different. We'll go into our logical node of MMXU and GGIO4. So let's grab our GGIO4. The RMMXU came up first. Okay, that's fine. So the first thing we're going to say in here is our phase voltage, phase A. We have a magnitude and an angle. So this looks like a phasor. So we'll grab the phasor first. So this is volts phase A, and then what we'll do is the next one we'll grab the current. So what I'm going to do is a copy paste, a Control C to copy this, and a Control V, so it'll save us some time from looking down the list. Here we go. Once again, MMXU1, MX, amps, phase A. We're going to look at the magnitude. The A and G is the angle of the phasor, so just make sure that you select the right one. So we're looking at a magnitude value. The third item that we're going to publish here is the GGIO4, which is our RMS value for amps, for phase A amps, and for our volts phase A RMS value as well. So moving on, here we go. So we have GGIO4 MX analog input 1, and we'll do the same thing with number 2. All right, now keep in mind, this value here is GGIO4 analog input 1. Analog input 2 refers to, let me minimize this, refers to this. So the analog input item here is this analog input item. Analog input number 2 refers to analog input 2 here. So this is the correlation between the two. Okay, we'll save that. All right, that completes the analog portion of the configurable Goose. All right, now we have to reboot the relay to publish these results as well. So we'll come down to the bottom here again under relay 1, down to the maintenance portion, and we'll reboot the relay. This now concludes the publishing side of the configurable Goose for analog signals. Now we'll set up relay 2 as a subscriber for those analog signals. So we'll go down to relay number 2, and we're going to have to list the name of the Goose message that's associated with the analog signal. So we're going to go down to the inputs again, inputs and outputs, and go down to remote devices and enter in the analog signals Goose message. So in here, under remote device number 3, we're going to change this name to motor_analog is how we named it. The app ID, I changed it to 1, and we'll put this into the next Goose in holding area. We'll click on save. All right, let's close this down. Now we can go down and take a look at our status on the relay number 2. So this is relay number 2, actual values, remote devices status, and we're going to need to reboot the relay. No, actually the reason it's offline is it's got nothing to do with rebooting the relay. Actually, we have not put in the reception side for the analog signal. This is why this is offline. So here's what we need to do. Let's close this down for a second. On the reception side, like we did with the analog signal, on relay number 2, so let me just bring it back up here. Relay number 2, under product setup, IC 61850, we need to go into the reception side. We're going to set up the second Goose message to reflect the 4 signals that were being published. Now we'll go into the next Goose message on the receiving side, and we'll have to go down. We'll go down to select the analog signals that are coming in. Right now, you notice that the functional constraint here is status. We'll just go further down the list until we get to the metered values. The publisher is sending out 4 signals, so we're going to have to make sure that we have 4 signals published in here as well. So this will be number 2. This is the 3rd one, and number 4. We'll save this. We're going to have to reboot this relay as well. So after saving it, let's close this down, and we're going to have to go down to relay number 2 and go down to the maintenance section under actual values, all the way down to the bottom, and reboot the relay. All right, now let's confirm that our 3rd Goose message is online. So we're going to go back to the top here. We're going to look under actual value status under relay number 2. And we're going to look at the remote device status. I need to log back in. One moment. Fantastic. So here's our analog signals, the Goose message with the analog signals. It's online. That's great. Let's close this down. And now let's take a look at those analog values that are being published from relay number 1. These are listed under the metering section under actual values, metering, and this item right here, IEC 62850 Goose analog inputs. So when you double click on this, so after you move the potentiometer on the RTT, the numbers will change from 0 to the number that's actually being displayed. So the correlation here, we have let me just show you what's going on here. So from relay 2, this is what's being subscribed. This is what we're seeing. From the subscriber, let me show you the meter values that correlate to this. So from relay 1, the phase current, so this number matches this number, and for the voltages, so this voltage matches this voltage. So Antoine, could you adjust the current and voltage for me, please? So this is from relay 1, and this is what's being published over to relay 2. You should see them both changing together, and very quick. Fantastic. This concludes the analog portion of the Configurable Goose. Thank you.